Hello, Amanda.
Is there no sound? Nobody talking?
We're just silently waiting for
Obedient.
for the fun to begin.
Okay, good.
Yeah, good to see all you guys.
Hi, Heiner.
When are you coming? Amanda, when are you coming?
I don't know. Maybe soon. Yeah.
I need someone doing the dishes.
That's good. That sounds really good.
I'm joking.
Yeah. We should talk a bit.
Heiner sent me an email about today, so I thought, yes, I should join because I missed quite a few Sundays.
That's good. So where's Doug? He's online.
Oh, probably appear soon. I really loved the open conversation on Thursday. That was really an amazing meeting, I felt. I was kind of on the road, but I'm so glad I joined that. Hello, Stacy.
Let me see where Doug is. He's online.
Probably putting out a reminder.
Yeah. So are you doing the dishes, Heiner? Who is there?
Sometimes someone has
Anna.
to do the dishes.
Yes, exactly.
Anna, hello.
No Doug yet. Well, does anyone want to check in?
Oh, yeah.
I think the floor is open. Yeah.
You can start, Anna.
Oh, I thought you were going to start. You said yes.
I was confirming you.
Oh. I've had a busy day. Oh, here's Doug. We're just starting on check-ins. We're recording, so no problem. And I was volunteered to begin, so I shall begin. Yeah, busy day. Cooking and stuff on Zoom, and it looks like this is a really restful place to be. This is what I'm hoping. This is just going to be a really serene time. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Over.
Glenn, could you make me co-host just so I can keep a finger on the mute button for...
I'll try.
Background noise.
I'm using the iPad.
Ah.
Oh. I'm not sure if I can.
Well,
Maybe
Sam made you host, so you're the designee.
Okay. Yes. So I'm going into the more. It's at meeting settings. Maybe
and go to participants.
Yeah, allow participants.
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, allow participants to share. That's clicked on. There isn't one that's only called participants there for some reason.
No. Manage participants?
Are we to be managed?
Yeah. You especially.
You especially.
I'll do my witchcraft.
We have a special thing just for you.
Amanda button, specifically made in Zoom. That's an honor.
Well, there actually isn't. That I can't find it here for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe you are bewitched.
Yes, I think there's some witchcraft going on here.
You can't find the list of attendees with the camera mic to the right.
Wait a minute. Yeah, participants. Now I found it. Yes. So
if you go to the
that
right,
was beautiful.
If you go to the right on me,
make host or assign.
You can make me a co-host, either or.
Assign co-host. Yeah.
If being a host is weighing heavily on your shoulders, then you can.
It's happened.
You can be the host, but yeah. Anyway.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, folks.
Mission accomplished.
Sorry to interrupt the check-in flow. Heiner, what's going on? It looks like you can't hear us.
I think he's muted.
Did Glenn change something on the settings?
No.
To his name?
Heiner, can you hear us? I'll take that response as a no. So that's something audio on his end.
Yeah, but he wasn't touching anything. He wasn't by his camera when the sound went out.
It can happen. It's the mysteries of the internet universe. No
sound.
Restart. So I had a quiet day and I had a long conversation. I have a long conversation, but this part I'm trying to wrap up something about being empowered to do something or intrinsic being. And it's kind of interesting. So that's what I did. And yesterday I had a pleasant day in Amsterdam, which is great.
Is there a relationship between those two things?
Yeah, because I went to the Hermetic Museum. So I'm reading interesting lecture. And it's about the freedom of thought in that sense. So I went to the Embassy of the Free Mind, it's called. But there has been a lot of interesting manipulation maybe of texts and symbols and stuff. So it's not only about the freedom of mind, it's interesting. So these things are echoing through the day a bit. Yeah.
Amanda, I would have loved to join you.
Yeah.
But I was very busy yesterday. And I just somehow got up, so this is my breakfast.
Good for you.
I was cooking late in the night when I came home out of frustration. I was at a members meeting of all the journalism associations in Berlin and Brandenburg. That is the main chapter in Germany. And they were trying to unite or reunite after 30 years. And there were really some skirmishes. So I was really occupied yesterday, and going to that museum, I would have loved much more.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm about to do the dishes,
Yeah.
and maybe eat something, but I'm fully with you.
Good.
So we're doing check-ins. Welcome, Harry. Welcome, Colin. And Anna has gone. Amanda has gone. I think that was Heiner's. Who would like next?
Yeah, I'm just tuning in as not to be late, but I'm not ready for camera yet. And nice to see everybody who I've seen so far.
Okay.
And continue on. Thank you.
I'll check in. I'm just glad to be here. I'm interested in hearing more about actually what Amanda said is that's an interesting topic to me. But I'm also interested in hearing what Heiner has to say, because I'm curious about people coming back 30 years later and the skirmishes. And I'm going to assume that they haven't changed from what they were 30 years earlier. So those are the things that really interest me. But I think, as I've mentioned to some people before, I'm more interested in how do we change processes to accommodate people to where they are than to try and change them, especially considering that some people really don't want to be changed. With that, I'm complete.
Yeah, I can do a brief check-in. I'm here today because I really enjoyed the Thursday conversation. Really felt like great nourishment. We come to understand that I need to have meetings like this, and somehow it's necessary to keep the inspiration going, and it feels very important. And had a very nice one-on-one conversation yesterday also with someone who's been in these calls or similar ones, and also saw a post Heiner wrote and mail, and been reflecting a lot on the ideas he's been sharing. And unfortunately, I couldn't make the yesterday's barn racing because there was a dinner, sort of a celebration thing, and but that was really nice. And so today I kind of sat down for about 10 minutes before here and wrote down some keywords, and there was a lot that came up, so I can't read all of that now, but I was very interested, of course, when Amanda mentioned the question of freedom of mind, because I just went for a walk in the woods, and sometimes then I'll just put on a recording and I'll speak into the recording as a kind of a audio diary, and that was exactly the topic that I went into, so that's also a very interesting occurrence. Hey, Tammy is here. So yeah, anyway, I'm glad to be here, and I'm ready for whatever direction it might take. So
Welcome, Tammy. Jazz, you want to check in?
Very relaxed, very good listening mode actually today. Lovely day out there. I was thinking of skipping it and going for a long walk, but I'll stay and hello, Tammy. Nice to see you. Harry, Alex. So I'll stay and maybe go for a walk in the dark. I'm complete.
Harry, Tammy, Alex, you guys want to check in?
Hello, good morning from Vancouver. I just woke up. I'm not really awake yet. I can feel that my mind is not totally online. It's good to see you all. I'm on the phone, so I can only see 4 at a time. Yeah, I'm just, I have little to say at this moment, so if anything pops up, I will do this later. Thank you.
Did you dream?
Yes.
Was it nice?
Yeah, but I'm in my dreams. I'm sorting out a lot of things all the time. It's about choice. What is the concept of choice? I think. I don't have stories.
That's good.
Thank you. Good to see you, Amanda.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Tammy?
Morning.
Morning.
I'm also freshly out of the dream place. It's nice to see everyone. Yeah, it's good to be here. Morning.
So I have the advantage of going last and cherry picking. So I don't have to work so hard at dredging up the snow and ice that's outside my window. So, but this idea of freedom of thought. And Stacy, you went to a place of process. And I sort of, the question that comes up for me is, why does that happen? Like, why isn't it possible to look at it from a place of, instead of process, state of being first? And with unusual succinctness, I'm actually complete and we'll leave it right there.
I just like to say it's both.
I was just going to say, I think it's impossible because we all come from a different perspective. And so I had this other conversation. There's the truth and there's my truth. So I have a truth, you have a truth. However, where they overlap is the only real truth with a capital T. So if my truth is conflicting with your truth, there's a part of that is not really the truth. So I don't know if I'm articulating what I'm trying to.
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. So the reason we need the process is to not leave it to the people to decide what track a given person has to be on. Because we can't see what we can't see, and that is usually the other person's perspective.
Yeah,
Could we? Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
It was a part of the museum's exposition, so it wants to liberate, all different kinds of views and questions about life, and how, well, each and every person that's being in the exposition is doing that. And it was very cosmological. So why are there stars, and who is God, and why is there no peace, and these sort of interesting questions. And then I'm having a religious debate for 3.5 years that doesn't come to a process. It does not. The only overlap with a capital T of truth is where there's a harmony of being, and it's not a discussion. It's not a discussion at all. It's an energetic presence. It's the trust and the alignment of a certain discernment. It's all sorts of invisible stuff, but it's not a discussion. That's the last thing it is. And if I start a discussion, then you get big fight about any process that is being done. It's non-psychological. It's absolutely out of the realms of normal communication where you normally come to an agreement. This is not what we're doing. And so it somehow struck me that in a museum that, where everybody can do his own mind and have his own questions, and we could be all separate people with their own separate imaginations and dreams about reality. I like the fun of having overlap. it's more fun. But then there's something like some truth that people feel within themselves that is sort of their blueprint. It's sort of the decision of their soul to be like that. And you cannot put that in a process somehow. So it's fascinating, all these different ways to go. I try to be really flexible with it. But some people, that's an extra challenge.
Yes.
And I do my best, really.
May I please go next?
Sure.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
I'm not sure Stacy was done though. Can she wrap?
I was just real quickly. I was just going to say that the default setting seems to be this doesn't fit instead of how can we fit this in?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you make do with what you have is another one. Waiting till everything's perfect might not be the right time to start. So that's the state of being I think that Doug's talking about. But we have it out about truth in many different forms. And I'm thinking in order to take it to the place that I can make use of it is to change it maybe to a new word or a new syntax called understanding. So your truth is what you understand, I would assume. And faith would be something you hope for. But the truth, say if it's your understanding, it will take you to a solution space then, which is where you can actually look at different processes, and everything you do day to day is your process. So, if you have mentors, they can help you be aware of your process or help you make processes, but not for the point of saying, oh, you must do this next, you must do that next. It's to be aware. So as you go down through the process, you can become at a state of being, which is the now. And in there, it's very important to be aware, very aware of the now, but you are in a process of some sort, many of them. So
maybe
you can visualize it.
Maybe not.
Well, if you're not, you're kind of just meditating, I would say, and that's a process.
Maybe not.
Could we say that the state of being creates a process? And if we reach this harmonious being, that creates a harmonious process.
I'm saying if you can draw it in a journey map, then you can see it. So if you have a process that you can't draw, then it's just one more level abstract you can't see.
I don't know. I just feel like total harmony, but on the realm of speech, there's total disagreement sometimes.
Yeah, the part of this that, and this is just me. Like, I don't purport to project this on anybody else. The having to map state of being to anything is like the first instinct of the current order. It's a process, it's a structure, it's a framework, it's a thing. We have to take the idea of being and marry it to this intellectual abstract thing, because just being in and of itself is not okay and sufficient. And I think part of that is that the program of the world we're living in says, don't be, do. Like, we don't want you being, because then you're going to think about it. And if you think about it, you might stop doing. And then we're not in control anymore. And you're not producing your quota anymore. And you're not fighting amongst yourself anymore. And you're not doing all these stupid things that attaching being to facts, being to truth, the whole construct of truth, why is that an inquiry first? Or why is that a reflexive inquiry? Immediately, what if we could start just with being okay? And how are we being? And am I connected? And am I present? And am I hearing and listening and getting what's being shared or given? And if I have questions or doubts, how can I inquire deeper? I'm done. I'm complete.
I think being looks different for each being that's doing the being. And we look at it and we think, well, that's not what it's supposed to look like. But maybe that's part of the, we're looking at it through our own lens. So who's judging somebody being?
Absolutely.
I'm having trouble with words today.
No. You're right on. It is judgment, right? What you're ultimately pointing to is the reflexive judgment of. But if you unpack that, that's not at the beginning, at the heart of being. That's after a whole bunch of edits. Because if I'm making a judgment about you or how you're being or how you're talking or how you're contributing, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I'm stirring into the soup to get to that judgment. And that's a reflex, in our cultural reflex. Do we have to do that, or can we transcend that reflex? And I think it's lizard brain. I mean, I think it's lower stem stuff, but it's reflexive. It's like, that's where everybody wants to go. And it's like, cut that out. What if we didn't do that?
So are you saying, Doug, that we could, so are you saying we could live without judgment altogether?
Why not?
Why not?
Is it a possibility? Is it like, could somebody remotely think that that would be possible? Like, instead of it being about judgment, it being about presence and being, and me knowing you and seeing you, feeling you, sensing into you. And that'd
exactly.
Be enough as the starting place.
But then what you find may be differing. So this is interesting. So I'm still talking about my telepathical bond. So we can do that, right? But then what he finds depends on my state of mind of the day. So, and what that is, maybe a very much doing mode and not so much a being mode. So we could be upset by this is interesting. That even being is an art. That's not just done like that. And then I had a long conversation with a friend of mine who sees everything into power relations. And I started to get a little bit tired. I took a lot of time for it. And now I'm just saying, why can't you just let that go? Not everything is a power relation. Not everything is an ownership thing. Not everything is yours. Some things may be bigger than you and out of your control. And so then that is where being starts, actually. Some people are so reluctant to go and start being that. It's like, so I have all these sorts of, this is a day of reflection on all of this for me, somehow. Yeah.
Alex?
It's something Stacey mentioned about truth, as reflecting on the fact that her truth is one version and there's billions of people, so there's billions of versions of truth. And that's necessary, because if we all had the same truth, it wouldn't be a very exciting world. We'd all be marching to the same tune. We'd all be beating the same drums, you know what I mean? We'd all be creating the same symphonies, we'd be creating the same works of art, the same music, the same poetry. So it's vital for us to have our own views. And those views come from our life experience, the past, the present, and the future, which I just drew an image of like this, past, present, and future. If you can combine those into one, you've got something more holistic to think about with truth. So that's my flavour to add to the soup.
Heiner?
I have a question. we all speak a lot about futures, many futures we have to design and create and share and negotiate. But how is it about judgments and truth? There, or at least for me, I have various judgments at the same times and also various truths, just depending on where I am and what I keep in mind. Isn't it our fighting to believe everything is power or everything is sex or love or whatever? Can't we really come to bridging in fields or in spectra and not just having this one and only position?
Well, that's
There's
sort
three,
of happened. I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead.
there's three kinds of truth: natural truth, objective truth, subjective truth. And depending on the situation or the mood you're in that on the particular day, or the case, the emotional trauma you're going through with your neighbour or your partner, those truths can vary. It's like a wave, like a biorhythm. One day it's chaotic like that, up and down, and the next day it's flowing. This is about living, about coping with things, coping skills, I think, psychologically speaking. So, we accept what truth comes along until we discover something that overrides our deeper beliefs, and we find a new truth. That progress. Over.
You see, I think I cannot agree with you at all. We now have third phase science, where we say all this reality depends where we are in it and what the situation is. So Laszlo and also Christakis have been working on that this objective is either an illusion or a nightmare.
Yeah.
But not what you're saying, there's only one objective truth. I hold
that's three
truths at the same time, and
Hold on,
sometimes
Alex.
it's making crazy.
I raised the syntax flag. We got syntax problems.
Hold on. I want to.
Spot on. I just want to say spot on, because I don't like being told I'm wrong. I was only mentioning what I believe. Okay, I don't believe there's one subjective truth or one objective truth. There's three kinds of truth. We've all got our own views. Over.
Harry, you raised your hand, and Stacy, you raised your hand. Can we go in that order?
Thank you. To me, it feels like we're spending the time explaining to each other what the absolute truth is. For me, that doesn't really work. I only can speak what I understand, what I see, and I'm happy to share that. But then people would want to know. And for now, I just think the best thing I can add to the conversation is silence. Thank you.
Thank you so much for using the word understand. That's the pivot I'm using.
Hold on a second, Colin. Stacy?
I wanted to go back to Doug's question when you said, could we do this without judgment? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that we could shift our focus. So for example, when you mentioned like how it was driving you crazy, what would happen, and Gertrude will probably like this, but what would happen if you turn that to you and say, why does it make me so crazy when they're doing that?
The thing is, we're used to a process, so it's interesting. So when I start to be with the situation, I'm fine. But if words come out to clarify stuff, then we come into totally different perceptions. And there's where the misalignment actually starts. It's the wording that does it. And then the interesting connotation that I want to go back to is actually that our perception of control of reality and of process and of rationalization, as Doug mentioned it, can be very, and that's interesting that Alex called it, it's my belief. And there's no more space for belief when we go and tell each other, no. So some of the things, even when they're maybe scientifically proven wrong, they may be in our hearts, and then we have, our blueprint of being in life with and you mostly share that with old friends, they know you throughout. They know all your circumstances and situations. And there's where the interesting process sometimes starts. And what is the thing? It does matter greatly. For example, if I speak with a friend who is seeing everything in power, that there's no space for certain aspects of life to discuss. And I think this is the suffocating thing that happens between people, where people start screaming like, but I'm here. So yeah, well, these sort of insights that are compiling today.
Sam, you put a comment. I just want to check on, I just want to make sure, is this Sam's replying to Alex? You said in the chat, judgment is how you interact. Were you referring to Alex's contribution and Myers' reaction, or is that your baby?
I'm referring to, if you don't have judgment, you cannot interact at all in any fashion.
Really?
It is judgment that lets you decide whether or not to interact in a loving way, or a different judgment that lets you interact in a supportive way, or a tolerant way, or a conflicting way, or a violent way, or a judging way. Those are all judgments. So to think that you can actually be without judgment, yeah, I think you got to be dead, because you're always judging. You're always deciding. You're always picking among options. Over.
But isn't that being? Choices of being?
It is being. I have that notion of being. But I'm hearing Doug have a different notion of being, where you're actually without judgment. And I don't even understand how you live that way.
Well, I make a choice now.
Ethics and intimations, rather than having a fundamental disagreement. So I actually think this clarification of terms and what we actually mean by these words is crucial. But we never go there. We always go into, oh, you said that, I disagree. Or you said that, no, be this. And even in the statement, oh, Alex, you're wrong, is a conflict with what I'm hearing here, which is somebody is actually not allowing Alex to be. They're actually already judging Alex. And
that's judgment.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of judgment we could do without, right?
No.
No.
Could be. It depends on how you want to let that person be.
Well,
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that you cannot do it without judgment. And
well, if I just let him be
without judgment, I don't understand that.
Well, if I just let him be, I let him be as he is. That's it. The only judgment I do is about my being. So that what I heard you say, Sam, was now a choice. It was discernment related to choice of being, building on what Doug said, but the judgment that seems superfluous is to make judgments about others that I don't know who are in a different situation. So for example, Alex, when he says what he says, that's a reality. His belief is a reality. So it's true. It's not the whole truth, but it's a part of truth. It's a reality. And I don't know all of that reality. But so if I sort of say, oh, you're wrong, I don't really know what that statement means. You're wrong. That seems superfluous. So if I just remove that, have I lost anything? I don't see that I've lost anything then.
I think if I can unpack a little bit, because this is really a big deal here. So a judgment is not chapter 1. It's not where things start. It's like chapter 3 or 4. In order to get to a judgment, you have to be experiencing incoming. You have to have beliefs and or fears and or structures pre-existing against which that's being compared and stood up. And then you have to go, then you're going to comparison validation, which is generally behind judgment, is about right versus wrong. So is my belief validated or not? And if my belief is validated and the other person's belief is is in contravention of my belief, they're wrong necessarily. You can't have somebody be right without constructing somebody else being wrong. That whole judgment mechanism is really down the road. Like you have to get to some serious decision-making, choice, intellectual abstraction, processing to get to the punchline of a judgment. What I'm suggesting is, what if, just what if, shits and giggles, we back it up to the beginning and go, I'm going to come from a place of being with a focus on 100% presence and attention to this moment. And I'm going to receive as fully and robustly as I possibly can whatever is coming at me. And not just on an intellectual level, not just on a language level or a logical level or a fact level or any of that stuff, but I'm going to receive it in every dimension of what's communicated and shared within it that I can receive. And it's in service to not just connection, but also getting whatever the person is trying to share. And I'm complete there.
So I think the only way that can be done is if you shift the judgment to oneself. And I think to what Sam's point is, we are always judging. That's what we're meant to do. From the minute we're born, we're judging whether a touch feels good. It's a cumulative process of...
Experience is not judgment.
But
we experience a touch. We experience a touch as good and a hit as hurtful. But that's not judgment. That's an experience.
But then maybe it's a semantic issue, because I think to me it is then we have different meanings for the word, because for me judgment means how I take in all the information and make sense of it. That's what I consider judgment to be. When I say I think somebody has a good sense of judgment, I mean that I understand and it makes sense to me the way they pull in all the data and they put it together. So that's what judgment means for me.
Clear. Thank you.
Bingo. Syntactic errors all the way through this morning. One person's truth is another person's belief, is another person's rights. I'm saying there's two sides to it. There's the part that we don't understand, and there's the part we do understand, or we think we understand. So that's kind of what I'm saying, where critical thinking comes in and where the useful truths are. And the other truths are more hypothesis and beliefs as well, but in a way you can't prove them. So if you're talking about both of them at the same time, we're really not differentiating enough for me to get forward, if that's what we're trying to do. I don't know.
So I think I understand what Doug is trying to say, but I think that he underestimates what is actually entailed in getting rid of judgment, because it means totally letting go of the past, of everything in the past, because judgment means that you are comparing something to something else. In order to make a judgment that this is good, you're comparing it to some other experience that you've had that is whatever. But if you actually just experience in the now, then there's no comparison. But now is a very it's a very narrow point. So if you're just experiencing now, I mean, that is just, we talk about polishing the mirror, or, that fine point of now where you are totally present, 100% at this point, and you don't remember anything about the past, and you know nothing about the future. I mean, that is huge to ask that of a human being. I think that's what would be required. if you're not going to make a judgment. But I totally agree with you that that is what we should be doing.
In what context?
This
In our
is the problem.
everyday context of in our daily actions, yeah.
You've got choices when you're dealing with your own self, your personal opinions, and your own choices in your daily life. When you're talking about somebody else, then you're making a judgment. See the division? The division's there. When you're in a courtroom, sometimes the judge will say, I'm going to make a judgment because he's looked at all the evidence. And it's about somebody else. If it was about himself, he wouldn't be making a judgment, he'd be making a choice. Over.
Sam and then Heiner. Heiner, Sam had his hand up for a bit here.
Well, I'm actually still in awe trying to understand the situation that Anna's describing. Because if I actually attempt to put myself in this state where I have no past and I have not any sense of future, then that to me is not living. If we have lived a life, any part of life, we have had information that has gone through our brains and our minds, and they create things. They create things in this cyber structure that we call a mind. And each of those things gives us a way to receive more information. If we have nothing, if all of this information that is coming at us doesn't cause any reaction, no stimulus, no if and, no judgment, no matching to what was previously experienced, no goodness, no badness, no pleasure, no pain, no nothing, then there would be no need to react. There would be no need to say anything. There would be no need to go anywhere. The information would be like neutrinos, passing through us. They would have no effect. So to me, that's not life. That's not living. Living is sensing what's around us, being in where we are, letting that basically accumulate in our memories. And then those memories allow us to do things differently or be differently or feel differently or choose differently for new information. So I don't understand why even having this non-reaction is even a useful way to think about living.
Yeah.
Over.
Heiner? You're muted, Heiner.
I like this conversation very much. And I feel it is very difficult and we're speaking about those fixations. And that is what I meant when just talking a moment ago. Don't get hooked in one reality, but try to angle and relax. And I have a very special recipe I did just for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Gold milk, cucumber, and ginger honey. And so to boil down, I would recommend for breakfast and before you go to bed. So, Alex, please excuse, I never tried to say anyone is wrong. I was just trying to say maybe we can do it also in extra positions without leaving our own one and other position. We have two eyes, so we have two realities already.
Oh, thank you. That's interesting. Doesn't that relate to what Amanda said as well?
Yes, perhaps. I'm still mind-boggled and I'm still trying to compile myself on all the things I heard. I must say I felt very close to Sam in my discussion. So I often used the idea of not being alive when you are not, at least engaged into some sort of a process a lot as my defense, I must say. So I really can relate to it. On the other hand, if I really sense into it, then harmony is harmony, you know. But then you still need to do something with it, I feel. As we're alive, why not? And then I was also wondering, and this is because I think communication has its own value, that often what happens if we're not the boss of all the information coming in? So some things are actually emergent within the interaction or within the sensing or within the experience. And these have their own contribution. So why do we always think that there's choice? There is something driving us also. And it's sometimes not the conversation, but something else that we're already at. And so there's much more. And I found during my conversations that it's often being forgotten or not being mentioned or not being given its own value.
Yeah, I would underline that, what you're saying, because
Well,
I think, sorry.
Stacy actually was first, Anna. You're second. Gertrude's third.
Okay.
Stacy's
sorry.
waving, so you're up, Anna. Sorry.
Okay. The idea, just to come back to what Sam was saying, that he couldn't understand what I was pointing to, that it seemed to be almost not being alive. If we don't react, perhaps we give a chance for that other power that you're talking about, that emergent reality, Amanda, to really come forward. We tend to jump in because we think we know, but if we just stay where we are, which it doesn't mean not being alive, but it does mean being patient, being tolerant, being peaceful, you know, waiting to hear. Perhaps there is a greater, I mean, the way that you were describing it, there is some more information than each of us has put together. There is something else which can bring new information to us. We don't know where it's coming from or what it is or how it is, but we can be open to it. Something emergent. If we, yeah, if we can, I can't say anymore. That's as far as I can.
Stacy?
That's in line with what I was going to say, because Sam asked, what's the purpose? And I was going to say, getting from here to there, that process is the purpose. So Amanda, I'm going to just use you for an example again, since you know, it makes it easier. But if Amanda chose to switch the focus to herself, and I would have said to you, what would it feel like if that person was right? Because what's underneath, for me at least, what's underneath those feelings, if I were having them, would lead me towards my own growth and healing and closer to the place that Anna's talking about.
Gertrude?
I think 100% presence is like asymptotic. It's something you try to get near. I'm not sure when you get there, if any time. And being in coherence, being in the alpha state or low beta or so, that brings, like, if I'm busy with my mind, I have about 2,000 impulses per second that I can take in, and being in this coherent state, I can take in 40 million per second. So I get more information actually than in the busy state. So it's not informationless to be there. And I think this I have to be 100% present. That's a judgment already. It's more like being aware of where I am and then dealing with it, or being aware that there are different perspectives on the same topic, being aware how my body feels, what's going through my mind, and not so much, and that is why it's wrong. Or I think I can go along with Sam to use the word judgment for everything, but I think that's not very distinct. For me, the judgment is really the layer when I judge what I hear, what I see, what others say, even about myself. So being present all the time is not my goal, but being aware of where I am and what is at the moment, just like it is, and then make my choices. Yeah.
Colin?
Yes, thank you. I think I can go on camera here for a minute. I've put on some disguising. You don't know who I am. Do you understand? No. So the conversation is really rich today, and I don't know what I should bring.
Brought you.
I already brought what I have. And that's a distinction between things I understand and things I don't understand. And a lot of the things that have been black and white today, I've wanted to comment and say, but it's not just black and white. It's like, being in the now. Yeah, nice ironer. Being in the now while you still can kind of know where you might want to go or where you've been. You might have different planes of experience, I like to say, not realities. So my biggest gripe today is syntax. Are we talking about experiences, or are we talking, are there multiple truths? No, there's one truth. There's multiple realities. There's multiple beliefs. Some may be to the point of excessive passions, right into the deep waters of delusion. Do we respect them all the same? Well, in this forum, I think we do, because we really haven't made any concrete decisions on what our reality is here. And I'm trying to say that there's several realities. Each person has multiple planes of it, and where they overlap is the opportunities. So where Doug wants to go for no judgment, maybe that's where his studio is, where he's going to work and start. But is it going to be at the end of his process? No, he says he believes in third level judgment, and he doesn't like to go there. Some people live at fourth level after the judgments. So, like they're already affected by the history. So living in the now and keeping your child alive, I think, is important, because our future of our human race is in with the children. But it's not, like Greta says, it's not up for them to solve the problem. It's up for us to find a way to get our syntax correct, so that when we're talking about truth, we're talking about truth. We're talking about understanding, we're talking about understanding, and we're talking about solution space, we can map it out a little bit. So if you can't map out what you're talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, if you ask me. That's just a funny rant for you.
Amanda?
I was wondering, we put so much energy in, and I also do it, in aligning the space to have your own reality somewhere, and a process, and then you can have a reality, and then how the realities differ, and then that costs a lot of work. And then, well, it's maybe odd. It's just like, maybe isn't it easier to align being? But then do we have to become the same? Well, this is the thing. I can't hear you anymore, Doug.
I think there are these autonomic linkages that happen. So I'm not talking about sitting there with my thumb up my ass doing kumbaya 24/7, being in the present in like a vacuum. I'm talking about a state of being in relation to my experience, my incoming. And I don't believe, because I don't believe if I come to that without judgments, without attachments, without everything that's occurred in the rearview mirror, without, experience, without memories, without all of that stuff, I don't believe if I leave all that stuff at the door and come to the present now, that somehow I'm not experientially affected by the present now. Experience and emotional response to that experience, energy response to that experience, intellectual and cognitive response to that experience, all those things are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And how I process, Sam, you can't do that, Doug. Why not? I get you believe that can't be done, but do you get the projection in you can't do that? Because I don't necessarily.
Absolutely, I do.
I understand that. So all I'm trying to do is suggest.
But Doug, you're doing the same thing.
I'm doing what?
You're actually projecting, and you're actually saying that what you believe is what other people ought to believe.
No, I'm not.
Absolutely, because you repeated it probably 50,000 times in these GCC conversations.
No. I can't understand. Maybe Doug can explain again, because what is that? You can do that? What is that? Because what I heard is, Doug, you enter a room, you try to leave before you enter, check in all the judgments and things that would bother you to be open. But you say that you're also affected by the interaction, by whatever presence and energy is happening in that room with the people, in whatever is happening there is also impacting you. So
of course
it was an very open way, but maybe something else is coming to your mind, Sam. I don't know what you saw.
And I'm not the one to add in, and Sam, I'll turn it back to you because I think Amanda's question is a good one. I don't project that what I'm suggesting should apply to anybody else but me. This is just my truth and reality in terms of where I place the center of my aspiration and how I walk in the world and who I am and how I show up. But I believe that the next like kissing cousin thing is choice. And is it possible that is that choice possible, right? And other people, might other people consider it? It's shared in that spirit. It's not shared as a projection. I get that for you, it's a non sequitur. It just doesn't make sense to process.
No, actually, for me, I believe exactly what you just believed, that I share things so that other people can actually consider them. But there is a real difference, okay? Because when we hear these discussions about truth or process, as Stacy brought up, or these, more non-internal truths, read perhaps objective truth or truth with a capital T or scientific truth or others, okay? Very frequently, in fact, I might also always say, just almost all the time, you follow that up with, why don't we just be? Now, if it were just true for you that you can be without judgment, then why is it necessary to always follow up these discussions of truth with, oh, why don't we just be? I mean, people have heard it. I mean, we've heard it dozens of times. So the need to actually restate that is more than just for you. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm not doing anything different. But for you to think that I'm doing something different is where I really want to lean in and clarify. Over.
Can I mention something until Anne gets back? That is that the fact is that it's multifaceted. The truth is multifaceted. That's why I love that image so much, because it's got three sides. And if you can bring those three things together, you're helping yourself along the journey, the truth, the past, the present, and the future. You're able to make better judgments. And that's what I think it's all about. How do we make better judgments? Over.
Yeah. Can I build on that? How do we make better judgments? That seems to be one of the questions. I'll just try to see what I've heard.
I was still about how do we do better being?
Better being, yeah.
Better alignment of being, and what is that? Because, for example, if I would be like my friend who is a power obsession, that to my other friend would be abhorrent. He would not be able to align. He's not even able to align with me at the moment. This is kind of interesting. So being is not, a liberty of judgment that you can control. It's a permanent state of doing, a permanent state of being, a permanent state of a whole beliefs and structure system that compiled are all your being, including your relations, including the impact. That all together, that whole constellation is your being, maybe plus your present and your past and so on. And that bringing that into alignment with each other is far more complicated than making agreements. But in another way, in resonance way, it's far more simple. You can resonate with somebody on the other side of the world. And in my case, travel there. Or have such a alignment on certain levels of the being and be telepathic, but on other levels being in fierce debate. So I have sort of special challenges on the being alignment thing, seemingly.
I think Tammy stuck her hand up. I'm just doing a check-in.
Glenn was, I'll speak after Glenn.
Okay. And then Stacy and then Colin, just so we have a...
Okay. So I'll try to see if I understand what's come up here. So on the one hand, we mentioned truth, even truth with a capital T. For me, that would be perhaps all that happens everywhere as it is, which is a lot, probably infinite. Then my subjective reality, this is also true in some sense, but it doesn't represent any, let's say, more general truth outside of it. So we're saying words, we see that we have some different meanings that are also being to some extent clarified through our discussing them. So judgment, can we not make any judgment? Seems like an immense challenge, of course, as Anna said. However, another sort of more modest question would be, but is there some judgments that I at least could live without? Like, for example, do I have to make a judgment about a person's character, or could I instead just see them as they are, listen as best as I can, and then try to respond as in the most appropriate way, and sort of have a more minimalistic attitude? So that seems to imply that there's also different kinds of judgments, and that some are better than others, some are more useful than others, and then of course that it depends on the situation. At the same time, when Doug made that statement, that was perceived, it seemed by Sam, as making a claim that this is a right way of being. Another way could be seen is that statement by Doug was an expression of life. So it was simply an expression of his being, and it's like a flowering of life, basically. Like it's just an outpouring of form, an outpouring of energy of a certain kind, and it sort of sends a message, and the message is the message. It is what it is. And the next moment, Doug is strictly speaking a different being, because he's also dynamic like us all. So in a sense, we're always a new being. At the same time, there's certain patterns and regularities that are carried through, and that creates our character, personality, etc. And of course, all of this is very complex, but there's also many orders of laws, one could say. So, okay, so with all of this, what about choice? Is there a choice for me how to be? And is there maybe a simpler way we could be without at least some of those judgments that seem clearly unnecessary? And it just seems to make life more complicated than necessary. And that's sort of the question I feel that Doug is putting up. And I really love this inquiry, because I feel that this brings me closer to a point of freedom, a kind of a superposition. Yeah, just what Anna was pointing to, a kind of superposition where different things are possible. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
So we can't get past judgment.
Oh, hold on, Alex. Tammy's up next.
The last conversation I was able to join, which was amazing, Doug, you'd gone already, and it was a 4-hour go. And what I entered into and what I was listening into was a conversation about wholeness and fragmentation. And when I hear our conversation today, I hear threads of that exploration. So, my sense is when I feel into the space, I can feel a sense of wholeness. And one of the things and the fragmentation. So one of the things that I mentioned from the point that I entered the conversation, for the next 25 or so minutes, I didn't say much. But what I noticed was that each person started the conversation with no, and then their part. What they were seeing was missing. And part of what I feel is that, we're all fragments, listening into the wholeness, yearning for wholeness, wanting to really understand and push past what we think we know. So, I think Sam talks about this generosity of listening, and that it's an effort. It's an effort to say, oh my gosh, so Amanda's saying this, and Jaswinder's saying that, and Colin's bringing this piece. Where do they touch, and how do they overlap? And what feels true? Because I think that there's, as Lucy, hi, welcome. As Lucy used to speak of the felt sense of things, this kind of sits in that place, because there is a wholeness. And I would equate wholeness more to truth, and that from our discrete lens, we understand the world through our experiences, through what we know, what we've come to believe, and all of that is subjective. And so this objectivity, I don't know how, as an embodied being with a location and a history and a language that we speak and a set of cultural experiences, that we can really come as being able to say, hey, I know the whole truth. I know that enchilada. And so as I'm listening, I'm listening into where what everyone says has wisdom and validity and where the differences are. And yeah, I'm grateful to be here. Welcome, Maita. Maita?
Hello. Just carry on. It looks interesting. I don't want to interrupt.
Welcome, Maita.
Sorry
All the way from
that
Peru.
I'm so late. Sorry that I'm coming so late.
That's okay.
Jaswinder, you can go before me.
I just wanted to put a balancing point into this lovely conversation, so deep. Let's make it deeper. Go to the other end. What is a lie? You have to balance a lie with the truth. You can't have one without the other. What is a lie? If truth exists, then a lie must exist also. I'm complete.
Stacy, then Alex and Colin.
I'm deciding if I want to answer Jaswinder or I'll go to my original thought. I wanted to go back to Gertrude had talked about presence and, not being able, the 100%. And I guess I would switch and use the word awareness and say that the choice that I think we have is how much awareness we put on, we put going outward and how much we put going inward. And Doug, like to your question, you said, how do we do it? I don't see any other way of doing it if you don't even know what your own judgments are first. I don't know that you can be aware of something that you don't know exists. So I think where choice comes in is whether or not we choose. Like I think in order to get to the point that you're talking about or that Anna's talking about, that desired spot, in any interaction, 50% of our awareness would probably have to be on us and what would be happening internally. And I think the choice is whether or not that's something a person even wants to strive for, if it's possible. But again, that's what I think the process is. So yeah, I've never heard a better process that would get from A to B other than understanding what the judgments are first, then watching them, and then this, then that. And again, I think it's like a balance because we drift in it. I certainly cannot be 50% aware of myself at all times. And I don't know that I even that I'm even motivated to do that a lot of the time. And just real quick, Jaswinder, I think instead of a lie, I would say an illusion. I would say there's a truth and there's an illusion because it's still something that exists, whether or not it's based in truth. That's just my opinion.
Alex, then Colin.
There's a lot of painful truths in the world, unfortunately. We have to acknowledge that. Otherwise, we're deceptive. We're not deceiving anyone except ourselves. But that's a lie, as Jaswinder pointed out. So truth is something that exists, and I believe that we are a privileged lot. We don't know what truth is. You want truth? You don't know what truth is. None of us know what truth is. Truth is a mystery. It'll only be explained in the living, in the doing. We discover truth on our journey, and then we experience it. We translate it, we digest it. It's life, and we enjoy it, unless we're living a lie. Over.
Colin?
A Few Good Men needs a little moment here. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, Colin?
Any other quick quibbles? Okay. Yeah, I have to say this Sunday show, my inner artist loves to be here. I've written a few notes so that I don't go too long, hopefully. But not so my inner artist loves to be here. This is philosophy. This is but my engineer is not so much. So we'll leave him at the door, right? At this show. I bring him to barn raising. But he makes a lot of noise out there, I must say. That's fine. But you know, I come here almost in a mini piece of Doug's desire for a deep dive, like who is calling, right? So these talks bring that out. So, you know, it's kind of like a church we're at, you know, being honest and wanting to be here. So I bring kindness and or truth, because I don't know if it's true or not. But, you know, if you look at a few of my latest Facebook posts, that's kind of the theme. So, you know, kindness and or truth. What do we know is true? So I guess I'll go to point 3. When we make a drink of an interaction, make sure to put in, you know, 2 good shots of critical thinking, so that if you need it, you can use it. But you have to judge, you know, whether, you know, splitting hairs is actually going to help catalyze the process that you've been brought into, graciously or ungraciously or whatever. So, you know, you have to think on these multiple levels, and that, you know, that's where Heiner's always sparked, and Alex mentioned the multi-sided truth today, and I think truth is organic as we get our understanding going. Willing to accept things we don't understand, that's an individual's prerogative. But, you know, the critical thinking is so important. So, so in that, Sam challenged me yesterday at barn raising and about the SDGs, because I say as we go around the journey map and fill in what our quest is, and so people can see where we are and how we've aligned, what we've tried. You know, Sam mentioned there was 5 things he wanted to add at the gate to go on to making agreements with him. You know, if you don't have these things in alignment yourself or with me, why would I go forward? Is the way I kind of understood that. And then he threw it back on my lap and says, well, what about the SDGs? What good are they? Like, where do they come from? Why do we need them? Like, you know, what are they about? And then he nailed me again with the women's right one, which is the one I use for an example. So, you know, I'm not a woman, but I just intuitively believe these things to be true, that if you make it better for women in places where they're not given as much, you know, domain over their agency, that things would definitely be better. Everybody should have domain over their agency and believe what they want to believe, and hopefully submit things to the scientific society to prove truths. And the other things are hypotheses and you know, and guiding stones that you can share. So, you know, Doug shares his guiding stones, Sam shares his, you know, so the idea is there is a large part of being here at Sunday that doesn't involve actually understanding or knowing, but being. So, you know, I accept that here. So what are the reasons for the women's rights and SDGs? Well, you know, I've got 2 or 3 people I can go ask about that, and I probably should. Heiner being one of them. But my proposal is those SDGs are individual syntactic boxes that are made it so that everybody can understand, look at that box is about that. And then you put them together like Lego or puzzle pieces, depending on the context of the experience you're going through, that you're being in the now, and what you remember from before, and what you may ask somebody, do you think this could happen in the future? So it's building futures and understanding the problem space. So I've come to these kinds of conclusions of being here and allowing the engineer to take a second seat on wanting to build the thing. And that was my other point. Everybody here says the it, like, where did I write that down? Yeah, like doing it. Like, what is it? That's the thing that drives me mad. There's no it defined. So, you know, and so that's where okay, well, what do you mean? What context is it in? Like, where can I find it? Okay, well, I'll start mapping it out, and when I find it, I'll let you know, right? So I think we have to be clear that we're in a giving, sharing, kindness mode where we're filling a certain need, and we should be aware in the now what that need is we're filling, and not waste our time. Why do I keep coming here if this is a waste of my time, right? So there's some need this is filling on Sunday, and it's my philosophical artist. There's no question. So, and in there, I'm hoping we can find ways to be clear.
Colin, just let me jump in.
Go ahead.
Colin, let me jump in, because SDG is very dear to me, and here you have it, the cube. It's important that we can show the context and what is part of the frame and outside of the frame. And Jean Gebser, this philosopher, said concreteness in integral world. If we don't embody it, we just have words and then we fight over meanings. No, I like that. I have to say bye-bye now, but let's play next time SDGs, seeing as one and not being fragmented.
I'd love to hear Harry.
Oh, hold on, Sam has had his hand raised forever here.
Okay, thanks. 2 points. I like what Tammy was observing from our last conversations. And I think that I really do want to follow up this theme of being curious with generosity and with kindness. Because I think that a lot of that has multiple impacts. One impact is that one attains a lot of patience. If you're continually curious with kindness, with compassion, you actually end up with a lot of patience. If you go in there asking, I believe this is a disagreement, but let me try and understand why I believe a mature, rational, wise, intelligent being would hold that thought, then that pulls me into that curiosity and generosity and leaning in. In order to do so, we often unpack differences in meaning between terms. Like, for example, this little T truth versus big T truth, subjective reality, objective reality, experience, truth, etc., etc. Which is why I think that one of the first things that we could potentially do to bridge that gap is to really, really understand how we use these terms. And that's why, by the way, personal plug, I believe that this Dictopedia notion is very, very crucial. It's always underneath. If we're not aware of it, that the fact that we use these terms differently, then we're arguing in a very vapid way. Where underneath it, we actually fundamentally agree. But just simply because we use different words for these different meanings and implications, you know, we think that these conversations have such disagreement, but if we just get that curiosity and generosity going, we'd more quickly understand where we align with our quote unquote beliefs or quote unquote truth or quote unquote experience. But we never go do that. We expect that the language is relatively meaningful the way it is, and we don't seem to try to dig underneath that. Tammy is with the alphabet code, which, by the way, I still don't understand. But there is a way to lead into it without the alphabet code that we still don't do. So one of the ways, like I said, the symptoms in GCC, if you actually lean in with curiosity and generosity, is, yeah, these conversations go on for a very long time. That's part of what happens, okay? And we need to understand that. But the other thing that happens is, if you go there and then you don't remember you went there, and then you come back to another conversation without remembering that we already went there, or a different group of people went there, you end up having the same conversations again. Which is, again, why I bring up this other notion, another personal plug, okay? Shared group memory. Shared group memory is so crucial for us to actually, if you value it, align in any sense. So I think that we could avoid a lot of this apparent disagreement if we actually recognize that clarifying our terms, remembering things, could go a long ways towards, quote unquote, this alignment that some people want, or the sense of community that people want. or even an evolution of values that people want, or different levels of existence that people want. But without it, we seem to have these same conversations. They sound like disagreements. They sound like they're repeating over and over and over again. And so I'm just, again, putting this on the table, not because I'm trying to force it down people's throats, but because these are clear implications that I see from the way that we behave with each other. And if we want something different, we have to do something different or be different. Being includes doing in my model of the human being. Being is not just being without doing in my model of human being. So being different means we have to actually do different as well. And that's what I'm suggesting. Over.
Alex?
When I made a change in my way of thinking in my late 30s, early 40s, I did so because I was in a crisis situation. I was like forced to face the reality that I needed to change. My belief system, everything had to change if I wanted to survive. So I had to do some inner work, and that inner work resulted in the change that happened. At the time, I was going to the College of Knowledge and listening to the old timers. They told me that a person who's convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And that sank in, so I'll leave it at that. Over.
Jazz and then Colin?
I'll go back to the question I raised, refer it to that, or rephrase it slightly. We have little white lies. Why don't we have little white truths? There has to be a balance somewhere. Every attribute has a minimum and an extreme. And if we don't get to the balance, Sam is quite right. We're going to go around in circles. We can use semantics, which we are, and we try and pin it down. So unless we come up with a definition at either end, what's in the middle, we're going to get nowhere. We'll be here till this time next year doing the same conversations. Quite right. So we use little white lies, and we use the phrase usually, well, it doesn't do any harm. It's only a bit of fun. And people get killed or hanged or prisoned with little white lies, or they get to become presidents. So why are we having such difficulty pinning down the truth? I'm complete.
Colin?
Thanks, Jazz, for bringing up white lies again. That brings straight back to the conversation about truth, but I won't bite. But I think it comes into where you can take critical thinking with you, but if you have to use it to pull out what you think is the truth, you have to decide, should I do that or not? Is this going to be useful? I think most of the time it is, but I've made the mistake where, I've probably let people down by being too analytical instead of supportive and emotional. So I noticed that Sam was in Sunday violating the I-we rule. He was saying, we this, we should this, we, and Alex was using the I. I've learned this, I learned that. And look at Doug shaking his head. So we are in the Doug solution space. Let's not deny that, anybody.
Did you just say we?
Yeah, we are. And I'm saying we is valid at certain times. And I'm saying Sam is sneaking in the we's valids from Saturday, barn raising. And I agree, it's all about syntax and understanding. And I just mentioned, Sam, since we're sneaking a little time, did we move a little closer? Because, there's the critical process thing, but then there's the understanding and your space in the now. Heiner's here, SDGs, I asked him, he brought a model. When do we not see information that's filtered? It's filtered by our senses, but if we can put models or thoughts of other people in between to help filter those ideas, and if we can listen to those and discern, maybe not judge, maybe discern is the right word here. It seems judging is only involved when there's people. Let's be friendly to judge a lot of ideas and use models and say, oh, well, this model works in this context, but not so much in that context. You know, your truths and dictionary is fine, but we're actually at a funeral. We don't need to know those details about what you think is happening right now. You can explain that to the medical society. They'd be more interested. So, you know, there's a time and place for things. And when we're in this space, it's very hard to see any ground. We're all up, way up in the air. And that's fine, but we should realize that. And people who try to touch ground and start the we stuff, they're going to run into trouble here. I did. So, you know, I would just like to say, Sam, that I asked Heiner and Heiner showed a model. And I think that's a great way where we could filter some ideas together and look at that cube. I think it would be really cool. But thanks.
Amanda?
Yeah, well, that triggers lots of things, but I was wondering still about, well, there's many topics we may already be reactive about before we even open our mouths. And so to come somewhere as open and present as possible is, even for all the topics that are in our being, kind of problematic. And I was wondering, well, one of my questions was, how often do we experience that we don't have to be reactive in a day? How many minutes, in fact, would we have? And then the second question I would have is about the critical thinking, which Colin, you know, kind of made emerge in his story. Is, could critical thinking be experienced as reactive? And is that right? When is that right? Because it's somehow very hurtful when you cannot be free in your thinking. Then it would be, you know, how do you mean I'm reactive? How do you mean I'm reactive? To be reactive about it.
Yeah, critical thinking is just science. Science doesn't care how you feel.
So
just whether we can agree on it, it's all.
So that's perfect for today, for unblocking. Because the idea of triggers is the idea of autonomic reactivity. It's a reflex. It's not with thought, discernment, consideration. It just happens. That's what a trigger is. And what's being invoked is a program from the past. In Sam's frame, you know, if man is machine, then, you know, the button that's being pushed is a program from the past. And it's being brought forward. Jazz, I see your hand, you can put it down. It's being brought forward from the past and run. And it may or may not make any sense, have any correlation to this reality in this moment and this exchange. But if that's my program, you know, it's like that gun in that movie, you know, this is my gun and I love my gun. And, you know, it's what was that, Full Metal Jacket? You know, it's mine and I live by it, do or die. And the discernment discretion piece, which is in the face of this, of something in this moment, what is my response? Or what is my takeaway? What is my receiving in it? And the question, I guess, for me is, and do we need reactivity in that? And that's really what the whole inquiry about being in the present is. Because if I lose my attachments, if I lose all that memory bank, if I lose all those buttons and all those programs, and some of them could be a trigger that has me yelling and screaming and stomping my feet, and some of them can be really subtle. I just check out. I just disconnected. And everything in between. But if the bulk of my interactions are 95% triggers going off, one after another, after another, after another, and only 5%, to Gertrude's point, is being made available to incoming. It's a lot of work. It's very tiring. It's stressful. It's like a real tax on being and living and receiving and experiencing, interacting, connecting, engaging with others. So I look at it purely from sort of a lens of, I think Gertrude really sort of nailed for me the core essential in it, which is that idea that the more resource I'm diverting to internal, the less I'm receiving, the less is available for connecting with receiving external, regardless of what I do with it. And that for me, it's in my interest to receive the maximum I can receive in service to being in consonant with, I guess, in consonant with the source between me and the other person. Like really getting to that, what we have in common. Anyway, so I'm complete. Anna?
Well, Jazz was going to go. He had his hand up.
Okay, Jazz?
I would like to take that whole conversation of all proposition of yours apart. You have so many interconnections in that there are contradictions in that, and they go back to what has already been said before. Suffices to say that the one that really I heard and triggered me is the one that says that triggers just happen. And then you went on to explain how they happen. So that negates the statement that triggers just happen. Point one, if there is no information to trigger, triggers don't happen. Point two, if you're aware of triggers that may happen, you can negate them. So we are going round and round in circles, which is what Sam said earlier. I'm going to leave it at that because we really aren't getting to, we haven't, I'm going to leave it at that because it's causing a fair amount of confusion in my tiny little brain. I'm complete.
Alex, and then Colin, and then Anna? Or Anna, you were first.
Yeah, but it's only a short point. You said that the amount of resources that we're using internally detracts from what we have available to receive externally. I don't think that internally, externally is a good separation, is a good division. I think it would be better to be more specific about what those resources are being used for when they are trying to cope with a trigger. I wouldn't call them internal particularly, maybe something to do with the past. They're connecting to something in the past. That was all. That was, I mean, you can play around with that.
I've got a theory about mindfulness. I read something during the week about a commentator saying that mindfulness was becoming a trend, a new religion or something like that. But I think it's important. It's so important to consider the fact that other people have lived a different life, a different experience, and their views are coming from that perspective. When I'm mindful of that, I'm more coherent about my own views and not trying to force them, as Sam and Doug would have discussed. That it's my opinion when I make a statement about what we should do, and I make my opinions that way because I'm at this point in my life. I'm present in the moment and trying to be mindful of everybody else's right to have their own opinion and views, because they're all based on their subjective truth. So that's where a lot of it comes together. It's not a bad thing, mindfulness. I think it's a great thing. And I would put it on the altar of open-mindedness, for want of a better word. Over.
Colin?
Yeah, it's wonderful, Alex. Glad that critical thinking and mindfulness, I don't know if they go together. I think so. Yeah, replying to Jazz's observation that things go in circles. I'm not sure what he said was the solution for that, but I do know that it relates back to what I was saying before. If you're using critical thinking in a way where it's not really being observed, where you know people just want to be heard, they just want to be agreed with, they don't want your opinion, they don't, you know. So to bring critical thinking in, and maybe this is a space like that. So you know, that's the thing. Like, is it appropriate? What were you planning on happening? You're going in circles if you're trying to fix somebody else. That's their task. You can assist them, but if they're blocked, and you know, we're in a philosophical space where you know, platitudes work. You know, the alphabet code is a beautiful thing for this space because it allows you to almost like write a song with your ideas and be, you know, and it encourages positivity, and it's like a thought catalyst machine of goodness. So you know, I can't explain critically why that would work. You know, it's sociological or whatever, but it's the person's journey, how they read the words of that song. So you could make a program that said, you know, if this happens, you know, don't duplicate the words, and if it, you know, or if I'm at this situation, you know, there's so many things you can do with information if you know how to apply it or what the context of it is. And I find here arguing about syntax when we don't even have, you know, it's basically leave your handlebars at the door. Let's, you know, and I'm looking for handlebars, right? I'm coming into the GCC and everybody's leaving their handlebars at the door. It's a weird feeling, but it allows you to let go and explore in a way that I enjoy. So, but yeah, I think it's going in circles if you're trying to fix it or trying to understand it in a way that's not really meant for you to understand, but observe and lean in a, let's say, a Sunday way. A Saturday, it's a different type of leaning. So, you know, but keep leaning and keep trying, and the kindness, people shouldn't shoot you. I don't think, hopefully. Anyway, thank you.
Stacy?
So my question is, if most or all of us agree that critical thinking is desirable, why aren't we asking more questions?
Can I build on that?
That's not really what I said. I said critical thinking is
that wasn't
it's
directed,
context
just,
related. Okay,
yeah, that
thanks,
wasn't
but I just
directed.
say,
That was my own separate thought that I put in the form of a question for a reason.
Well, critical thinking is a tool that you use to try to discern things, and maybe if it gets bad, you got to get to Doug's third level judgment, right? But let's hope not. Like, how do you fly a plane? That's a lot of critical thinking goes into that.
Yeah, and questions, maybe they can assist critical thinking or clear discernment. It was so interesting that both of you were talking about this now, because while I was sitting here listening to everyone, it came to my mind this video that was shared by a person who's been here before, and it was about collective intelligence. And he seemed to have quite a bit of experience with meetings similar to these. And in his opinion, the key to collective intelligence was that we listen attentively to each other, and then we try to listen for something true. And then we try to reformulate what we've heard and sort of bring that back and kind of like, is this what you're really saying, or would you then see, could we say it like this, for example? And that's questions, of course, a kind of questions which you could say are discerning questions. And we did quite a bit of that on Thursday, just sort of drifted naturally into it. And I felt that was an incredibly mind-expanding meeting, and it really gave me nourishment. It gave me inspiration. So if anyone says that we're not creating something, then they're wrong, because clearly that is something of significance. Of course, it doesn't mean it happens by itself, and it doesn't mean that, like, maybe Jazzwinder's, going into that. Sometimes we're going around the circles that might not be as interesting as they could be, for example. So that's another issue. So someone was like pushing forward, like, whoa, like, why are we thinking so small? We could look at this in a new way. So that's sort of what comes to me, that this is a kind of these meetings are, I mean, they're sense-making occasions, right? So we're transmitting energies, moving in all directions. We're asking questions. We're sharing ideas. We're sort of putting perspectives beside one another. And I don't know what it leads to, but it sure changes something psychologically for me. And if it changes something psychologically, it means that it has a real-life impact. So clearly, all of this has a real-life impact, even though it's not so easy for us to define what it is. So, well, what does all this come down to? I mean, I've covered a lot of things. I'm soon finished, Stacy, but yeah, I think what it comes down to is what Sam brought up, actually, about generosity and curiosity and kindness, because I believe that is a key, that if we have that, simply have that attitude and practice that systematically, then this sense-making process can really grow wings and we can evolve. And I've experienced it, and I've seen examples of it, and I'm pretty sure that we could take it a lot further if we're just a little bold and really dare to ask questions, just like Socrates and the philosophers did back in Athens. I mean, it led to an amazing wisdom. So we could do that even more today. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
If I could just...
Stacy, hold on one second. I just want everybody to be aware, time-wise, we're really coming up on the top of the hour. So if next shares can be closing shares, that would be appreciated. And Stacy, you're up.
So if I could just, say that the added effect of asking someone a question on a topic that they've already expressed interest on, if I'm the one formulating the question, and there's already a signal there that both of us are interested in those thoughts. So it's not like we're just being generous by listening and we're maybe moving ourselves from where we want to be. We've already found a point that we're interested in. So, for that reason, I think I would love to spend more time thinking about questions and the way we question. And thank you. And with that, I'm complete.
Colin? Colin?
Sorry, I was off doing boxes again. Yeah, I'd like to correct something that I said.
Are you moving?
I'm always moving. I'm in a process. I'm not moving officially yet, no. So I was saying I like to bring kindness and or the truth. I'd like to change the and or to maybe the truth, because it's not, the kindness can remain.
Wow.
And sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind, they say. I don't know, that's in a song, but I think songs jump off with emotions where words start to fail, then it comes out in a song. So that's part of the human thing. And I'm not saying you go out and find all the song titles and you're going to find great wisdom, but it's truth is variable depending on how much you understand. So you maybe get the truth, but you should come with kindness. And if something's really important and you have to get to that third stage of judgment, then that's a place we don't like to be. So let's try to, I think, as Sam was trying to say, his desires for us to try to be self-responsible and lean in without having to be externally provoked. So be responsible for what we're doing and making these agreements. And otherwise, you're going to need other people to tell you what to do, to work, or I don't know. There's something there, but yeah, the kindness should remain. But don't forget that kindness is measured with responsibility and importance as well. So yeah, thank you.
Closing shares, closing thoughts.
To be continued. I'm complete.
Alex, you have your hand up?
Yes. I was going to say, considering the amount of diversity in the group and in the world in general, there's a mindful thought came to me, and that is, may your cup run over with truth. May truth enlighten you. May truth fill your life with blessings and all that stuff, because it's what we're all about. We're all about being mindful of getting things wrong or getting things right, closer to the correct choice. There's a lot of choice involved too. And that's dependent on experience. So that's my check out. It's been a great conversation, and I think I learned something tonight. Over.
Sam?
Two thoughts, just to conclude, is that running throughout this session, I've tried to participate mostly via text. One of the things that I put in twice, and I rarely do this, is try and distinguish experience from truth. Experience/interpretation from truth. Either that or introduce it as a subjective T with a capital T or something like that, and indicate that there's something that's internal, that is yours, that is what you are talking about, or I am talking about. Because I think that would go a long way towards unpacking some of the confusion that's here. The second is that I bring up what I bring up because this conversation is called unblocking. Because many of these things keep us in a similar set of conversations time after time. And recently, I would say in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we're actually going to try new ways of doing barn raising. We're not bringing them here to unblocking, but we are trying to do things differently in barn raising, which have been captured, I think, in yesterday's and the previous Saturday sessions. So if there is any curiosity there, I would just refer to those 2 sessions. And with that, thank you for listening. I'm out.
Yeah, I can do a brief checkout. Lovely, super rich conversation as always. I mean, find it very nurturing and really moves a lot of curiosity to try to understand this better. I remember on Thursday we arrived also at this idea of choice related to being, a choice of being. And it's always under all kinds of conditions. And I think it's clear that here we agree that there's more outside of our personal experience, which is also true. And in a sense, our personal experience is true as what it is. So then this issue of being, that could it then be that being is the great simplifier through this complexity, in a sense that the laws are what they are, the events outside of me are what they are, but if I choose a way to be now, then I'm already making a difference without having to know exactly what it all results in. But clearly I'm making a difference. And if I can have a way of being that generally feels right, that feels true, that feels beautiful, that just has a kind of harmony to it, coming back to that point, a kind of harmony in my way of being, which aligns with my soul's mission, you could say. So that's obviously a sort of very big picture way of looking at it, but certainly that's somehow the defining factor. So, and that will be different for each of us. So in that sense, if you have an emphasis on certain things, then that doesn't conflict with me having an emphasis on other things. And in fact, that is what makes a group of people so unique and brings about such a great possibility, that each of us brings in gifts. And that again ties back to this idea of appreciation, generosity, and kindness, which then would be an attitude through which all of what we bring are seen as gifts and having potential. So what it then comes down to at the end of it for me is that yes, if I see all of what you bring as gifts, then they are gifts at that moment. So through my way of being, a new truth is being created within the larger truth. So that means that in some sense, being is the great simplifier, because I can choose a way of being at any moment. And I don't have to worry about everything else. I can just, let it be what it is, and I'll be surprised. I'm trying to learn more. And but at least if I can be a way of being that really feels right and harmonious, then, and also keep on learning, then I'm feeling peace. And it can all happen the way it's going to happen, but at least I've done my part, and I'm trying to keep on doing it when I'm coming from that place. And I felt that was the deeper truth behind what Doug shared, and many others here too. So really great to come back to that. And with that, thank you for today.
Yeah.
I want to come clean about what's going on in my mind, which may not sit right with what people are feeling, but I feel that our conversation is dancing around a being that knows the truth, that somehow is reflected in all our beingness. Glenn was mentioning the soul. Questions of judgment, is there a being that would accept me totally as I am without judgment, who would understand me, if you prefer to use that word? who is totally aware of what needs to be aware of in every situation, who has all the information. So this is what this conversation, for me, it's a beautiful conversation, and it's somehow, so the question, I guess, that's left at the end is, are we creating that being? Or are we reflecting? Are our ideas really reflecting, coming from that being, which is the greater reality, which is actually the reality? And that we're sort of feeling our way towards it, trying to find bits of it here and bits of it there. And the sort of the myth here in our sort of modern society is that you know, that we've created that being doesn't actually exist, but somehow we have to find it in ourselves. But my feeling is that it does exist, and we're feeling our way towards it. So that's where I'm coming from. And thank you for a beautiful conversation.
Anyone else? Amanda?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for, I mean, it gives a really nice outlook on where everybody is in this topic. So that's helpful. And I'm probably going to feel my way through it and see how the alignment of being is possible even more. Yeah, I think that's it for now. And lovely, Anna, you're, yeah, feeling our ways towards it. It's kind of very beautifully put.
Just curious to welcome Maita and see if Maita has any thoughts. Or maybe she's gone.
I'm here. Sorry. I was just trying to write down my ideas, but I can as well just tell them. And what I am thinking about any conversation whatsoever is that if we can first align, everybody of us, to reach a similar, I can't say the same because that would be like high wishful thinking, but that we would align as much as possible to the same frequency. Once we can do that, then we will start to talk a more similar language. Because I think, and it's not just with this conversation, I notice that with every conversation, that if people don't first align, words can be very much misunderstood. So yeah, I think that is like the most important thing that I would like to say in this conversation, and that's to learn how to align with each other before starting a conversation. And then the truth. I think that the truth is for everybody different. Also because we have to put it in words, and even explaining what we feel is complicated. So yeah, for me the truth is very individualistic. I don't think that we can say that there is truth, like one truth, or a general truth. I think it's very individualistic how everybody sees the truth. But it's very interesting if we can hear what others think that for them the truth is, because obviously we can learn from that. So yeah, thank you, Amanda, to invite me to this conversation. Sorry that I came a little bit too late. And I would really like to repeat this. Thank you.
Thanks for following the invite.
Yeah, thanks for diving into the deep end.
Where are you from, Maite? Where are you from, Maite?
I was born in Madrid in Spain, and I lived all my life in Belgium. So I'm normally speaking Dutch. But yeah, I speak more languages, obviously.
But you're in Peru.
And I'm in Peru now, and not on holiday. Yeah, exciting. 5 years already, so I'm getting used to it.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank as well, and I checked out several times, not physically, but just
Uh-oh.
Glitch.
Kicked out
Crash boom. Crash boom opera.
She ended on a butt.
I think that's what she meant.
Gertrude, you clicked out. Can you start again?
I said I think it's related to what Maite said. Sometimes it felt like a word salad to me. And so it was not so easy to stay in the conversation. And yeah, maybe because I was in a museum today to see Vincent van Gogh, a wonderful exposition in Frankfurt. Really, all the originals was really, really great. Yeah, and citing Ken Wilber, he says in this unified consciousness, you have access to the truth, to the absolute truth. But the minute you come to this world and try to find words for it, you're in the relative truth state. So I think there is something like the truth, but we only have our perspective to it, not the whole. Maybe in that unified consciousness, we can access it, but not in our real world here to express it fully. So we have to deal with the relative kind of truths or the perspectives we have. Yeah, so thank you. And maybe I have to go to bed early. So great. And Anna, how is your back doing?
It's fine. Actually, it cleared up in a few days. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Great. Have a wonderful week ahead, everyone.
Anyone else with anything else? Going once? Going twice? I'd like to thank everybody for being here and for co-creating this. And it's not easy, but it's in the doing of it. So I really appreciate that we come together and create this container so it's possible to poke and push and try to see things beyond the event horizon. That's my experience of this. See things see things I don't see or don't see yet. So thanks for joining the experiment. And hopefully see you Thursday. Have a great Sunday, Alex Monday.
Okay, thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Might I'll catch you somewhere.
Okay, yeah, bye on the other end.